So I will be also learning today from you.
Oh my gosh, Pierre, you're such a senior.
But everyone has something to learn.
Yeah, maybe it's just that sometimes I might share a few experiences where we learned because we went wrong and we went bad.
Yeah,
So,
that is very good now. This Vidul Lanka, I was telling you, I am sharing in my presentation because how we came back, like somehow come over the problems because of the
exactly.
leadership. I still recognize Ranjit Fernando's leadership in that area. If not for him, the industry also would have been.
And also the risk taking,
Hmm.
calculated risk that you take.
No, those I still say if the risk divisions were there at that time, we wouldn't have done any hydropower projects. You see,
Very true.
the risks we were taking high, uh, but with the risk divisions, we wouldn't have been able to do it there.
Correct, correct.
Because of my contribution to the hydropower industry, World Bank through administrative unit invited me to Washington DC for energy conference.
Really? When is that going to be, Pierre?
That was 2002 or 2003.
Ah,
Mm.
so that's great.
Yeah, because I was really innovative. I had hydropower experience also. I
Very true.
worked in CECB in hydropower projects. So
Ah, okay. So that you had that experience too.
mm,
Still, energy is still a favorite area of mine too.
mm. Yeah, because I think the risk from the market side is not there, no? Because
That's true.
if you generate, you can sell. And
Correct.
CEB has been good paymaster. They have been delaying, but they have been paying all the time.
True.
So we have to see that technically the project is feasible and the promoters can get the project done.
True.
So you must be having good portfolio of energy projects.
Yeah, yeah. We have quite actually now we see a quite an interest in solar also, Pia.
Mm.
Hydro is slowing down,
Yeah,
but
because
yeah, the potential is also limited now.
yeah, now most of the potential used by the industry. No?
But solar is picking up a lot.
Mm-hmm. We'll start at 7:05. We
Fine.
have 15 now. We have 37. The majority are ladies.
Economy is driven by ladies now.
Yeah, yeah. Now from NDB, all four are ladies. I spoke to Majela to come and share his experience. He said
Ah,
Dilunika is better than him. So speak to Dilunika. I spoke to Dilunika now. She said she will come back to me
okay.
more. Mm. But you are the front runner. You are starting the process.
Let's see how it goes. I
Yeah,
will ask the participants at the end of the session how would they evaluate me?
yeah, that's good. Yes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Today, as I have told you last time, we have a guest speaker, Ms. Ishani Palliyaguru. Ishani currently serves National Development Bank, or known as NDB mainly, in the capacity of Vice President, Project Finance and Corporate Credit Control, and has been heading the department for last 7 years. Mute your mics, please. She holds a first-class bachelor's degree in bioscience from University of Colombo and a master's degree with a merit in business administration from Postgraduate Institute of Management. Ishani is a fellow member of Chartered Institute of Management Accountants UK, while being an associate member of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka and Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka. She carries 22 years of banking experience, having started her banking career with HSBC at a young age, She later joined NDB after her bachelor's, where she counts 20 years of exposure in project financing. Still, she has not matched my experience. I don't have 20 years of experience. She has been trained overseas in Netherlands, India, China, and Singapore on sustainability in finance, encompassing environmental and social management in financial institutions, infrastructure financing in South Asia, renewable energy for rural electrification development and leadership development at National University of Singapore. She has been a leading member in country due diligence missions carried out by the bank for investment or lending purposes in countries such as Bangladesh, Uganda, and Cambodia. She has also been a key member of deal teams on numerous funding lines NDB had obtained from multilateral development financing institutions. Various due diligence missions and large finance packages arranged by the bank, especially for telecommunication and energy sector. Ishani has given a transformational leadership to project financing at NDB with exponential asset growth during her tenure today as the head of project finance, and also has initiated offshore project lending on non-recourse basis for the first time ever at NDB. I have taught you what is recourse and non-recourse, so you can remember. She has also paved the way for NDB project finance to be recognized internationally and locally with many accolades over these 7 years for very unique project financing and lead financing arranger initiatives undertaken to finance projects both in domestic and overseas markets. Ishani is a strong believer in sustainable development financing with both environmental and social impacts being addressed when financing such projects, and has been the driving force in implementing environmental and social management system in NDB for the first time ever. She recently took up the additional responsibility of serving as a member in the panel of judges in Wanita Bimana program, a national level joint initiative by NDB and Sirasa News First, aimed at rewarding countries' female achievers in 8 categories, including entrepreneurship, sports, environmental management, social service, and young leadership. So, to commemorate International Women's Day 2021, Interband, Daily FT, and Chamber of Commerce organizing a grand event leading in extraordinary times. Ishani is a panelist at this event on March 28th at Cinnamon Grand. So ladies in our class can register and listen to Ishani again. Thank you, Ishani, for agreeing to share your knowledge. Now I invite Ishani to present key aspects of project appraisal. Over to you, Ishani.
Thank you so much, Piaz. That's a very illustrious description of mine. But let me start. First of all, basically what I would like to see is that we need to strike a deal today with on me on one side and you, all the participants, on the other side. Basically, we all have joined here, you after a kind of a very heavy work and me after a heavy day. So now we are all tired, but we need to keep both ourselves interested in the program. On your side, I'll try to keep you interested in it. And my ask from you is that you also have to keep me interested in the delivery part. So that's a challenge both of us are now agreeing to. Okay. So let's go. I'll first try to share my presentation slides. Right. So basically what I will do is that I will just give you a kind of a quick snapshot of what I'm going to cover. And I will try to keep it probably to time frame where we have about 10 minutes for our questions and answers. And please do feel free to interrupt me at any point that you think you need clarification, because I would like this to be a much more of an interactive session than a one-sided lecture being delivered. I'm just speaking, and I really appreciate if you also could ask questions, participate, share your views, experiences, and so on. Now, when I looked at the profile of the participants, I was told that most of you have in some form or other experienced project financing. Even if not, probably with your other experience that you have already gained, you may have questions, you may have thoughts to contribute. Please do feel free. This is more of an interactive session than kind of a lecture as such. Now, my presentation today, or at least how I'm going to take you through what I have to speak, are classified into 3 segments. One is I would do a quick introduction as to what the project finance is, which Pial has already covered, and then also what project appraisal is, and a little bit on who are using that, and so on. Then my second part would be basically the overall credit appraisal ideally should carry 2 segments. One is where you give a brief snapshot to whoever the approving authority or whoever the reader is, and what should contain there and what is expected in that credit application, which is the snapshot I would call. Then I will get on to the much more detailed project proposal or project report, we call it. Now, if you look at the size of each of these demonstrates the time that I'm going to dwell on. And as we go on in the presentation, these color themes would indicate where you are in the presentation as to the flow of slide. So, see, you can be happy the moment I get on to the green slide, which means that basically you are coming to the last segment, but it's going to be a length. Why I use these colors is for you also to keep a track and not to get bored as and when we speak. I have started the presentation with some themes, mainly renewable energy, because as I was telling Pial a little while ago, renewable energy is very close to my heart. Major part of my tenure at NDB have been kind of financing, getting involved in various projects like wind energy, solar power, hydro, waste to energy, biomass. So renewable energy is kind of very close to my heart. That's why I chose the theme as renewable energy. So let's get on to now the main presentation. What is project finance? Pial has already, I think, taken you through and taught as to what exactly the project finance is. Now, project finance is actually the long-term funding of projects either in infrastructure, industrial segment, manufacturing, it can be agriculture, services, a wide variety of economic sectors, using non-recourse or limited recourse financial structures. Generally, when you look at a project financing, first of all, your priority should be to see how is my debt going to be serviced out of the project cash flows. So that's my third point here. The debt is repaid back from the cash flow generated by the project. Then only that we look at the collateral side. So collateral is actually not going to be our primary focus. It's going to be secondary, project assets, whatever the receivables, rights and interest, all that is actually your second way out in a project. Your primary way out has to be the project's own cash flows to service its debt and whatever the liabilities. So this project finance historically has been a key source of financing, mainly for private sector, but also the public sector as well. Now, as we go on, I would like to touch upon the public-private partnerships as well, where you will see both the public sector, the private sector get together to put up a project, and those also have been getting funded by way of the banking system. The other thing I would like to mention here is that throughout my presentation, I would primarily be focusing on the projects that are being funded here locally. But we should not also forget that the banks here nowadays are very actively exploring the possibilities of financing the projects overseas as well. There are promoters who have gone into the African region and set up energy projects, hydro projects, solar, wind, and so on. And I'm sure you would have seen that some other projects getting thermal power projects being set up in countries like Bangladesh. Some of our large apparel companies like MS, they have gone and set up operations in Bangladesh. Companies like Heller Clothing, they have gone and set up in countries like Kenya and even Ethiopia. Now, when I tell Ethiopia, you might wonder how good Ethiopia is not a country that we have heard as investor friendly. But see how the countries have moved forward. And Sri Lankan conglomerates have now moved into even setting up manufacturing plants even in countries like Kenya and Ethiopia. So basically, my focus today would be primarily the projects here locally, but as and when it's appropriate, I will also try to kind of touch upon on offshore lending. Now, just for me to pause here, I would like to ask some of the participants, I could remember the names, Chulanga was there. Chulanga, if I am to pose a question to you, have you experienced any kind of project lending? Just to know what exposure you have. Have you seen any local projects funded?
Actually, small projects like housing projects, those kind of things, because we are not involving in project financing here.
Right.
Only small projects.
Right. So, but I think eventually, which bank are you from, Chulanga?
Pan Asia Bank.
All right. Okay. So a bank which we know very closely. So basically, as you move, as you progress, I'm sure, Chulanga, you will get into the project financing, and I'm sure you will find project financing is a very interesting area. I was just telling Pial that what kept me for 22 years or at least 21 years in NDB is the most interesting part of project financing, which is basically from project to project. The challenges are different, the problems you face are different, the solutions that you have to offer the customers are different. So that's what kept me going. So let me anyway then now slowly get on to the presentation back again. Okay, now let's look at the purpose of project appraisal. Now, what exactly is the purpose of a project appraiser? There could be like, see, the credit evaluation, we all do it ourselves, right? We look at the past financials, we look at the project, location, maybe the land and the building, everything we look at. But who knows what we have looked at, what we have evaluated, right? So it's very important that we do record the evaluation we do. So the primary purpose of a project appraisal is recording of the credit evaluation we all carry. We might look at past financials, we might be looking at projections, and we will look at how the market is, all that. Now, unless we record, no one in the bank would know what we have evaluated the project about. So that's the first purpose. Then comes the approval. Now, when you do an evaluation, you got to, in some form, you have to present it to your credit committee, your dedicated senior management. Maybe some of the projects might even go up to the board level. So now you need to present it also in an acceptable form and in a structured form. So that is number one. Then number two would be that when your management, your board, your credit committee, when they approve, it has to get formally recorded. So the formal project appraisal, another purpose is that you formally record the approval that you have obtained. Now comes the not so good part. Basically, monitoring of the performance. Now, once you set down what you evaluated on, I'm sure you also in your own banks do a regular monitoring of the project. Maybe I think Isuri was there. Isuri, which bank are you coming from?
She's from Union Bank. Isuri, speak.
Hi, Isuri. You're all got to speak now.
Yeah.
Isuri, you might be muted.
Yeah.
Hi, Isuri. Okay, Isuri still seem to be muted. Fine. Basically, you have to do a regular monitoring of the project. Now, how do you monitor? With what are you going to compare the companies or the project's performance unless you have not recorded, you have recorded the initial evaluation. So one purpose is that you, for your project monitoring is required. Then comes the tougher part. All your internal other departments, the control departments will also want to see how you have evaluated a project and how you're monitoring the project and how you have implemented the project. So for external audit, the internal audit department, credit administration, central bank, what would they first go through to first understand what the evaluation process is? So that is basically, that's why I said the project appraisal serves few key purposes like this. Now, the structure of the project appraisal, as I told you before, I would like to kind of separate segments.
Sorry. Can you unmute? I think by mistake I muted everyone. Ishani, unmute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, now okay. So,
Yes,
sorry,
sir.
Ishani, by mistake you are muted.
Fine. Okay, let me share it again then. Piyal, can you see my screen?
Yeah, can see.
Okay,
Get into the presentation.
fine. Right. So basically, your project appraisal will have to essentially carry two segments. Generally, when you do a detailed project evaluation, you go into length. But what happens is your board of directors, maybe the members, senior members of your credit committee are so busy that they would want to see the snapshot of what you're talking about. So that is the purpose of what we call a credit application. In your individual banks, you may have different forms. It can be a summary sheet or it can be a certain standard format or whatever. But the principle is that there will be a certain section of your appraisal as the credit application. I would use the word credit application. Probably in your own banks, you may use various other terminology. Now, the purpose of this credit application is just to give you a snapshot to the approving authorities, who are the readers, what contains in the detailed report. So basically, the extent of the report, the credit application is very short. It's maybe 2-page grid form or certain standard form, and it's being used by approving authorities to just glance through. And generally, the board members, in my experience, they actually look at mainly the credit application, because they take the comfort of the process, like the credit appraiser getting passed through credit committee, the senior member levels, and the CEOs going through the paper in detail. So general practice is the board members, if your paper is going up to a board level, they only glance through the credit application and they entrust the rest of the team to look at into the details. Now with that, what's the danger? You must be absolutely sure and be careful of what you're presenting in the credit application, the details. Otherwise, if there's a small mistake, probably it can become a misrepresentation, or the other danger is that the board members might take a decision based on the information which you have provided in the credit application and could be wrong. In addition to that, probably your credit administration department, who is basically setting limits. Even the legal department, who is looking at the offer letter being drafted, they will also be going through this credit application form to pick certain information. Now, having prepared your credit application, then comes your detailed project appraisal, which will go into length. Right? The other whole purpose is, as I told you before, that you're recording your detailed evaluation on the project. Generally, the project appraisal is fairly lengthy. You cover so many areas, which I will get into subsequently, and also runs into I'm sorry, the spelling mistake here, long to fairly a large number of pages. And who uses it? Basically, it's used by the other departments, probably the legal department, and then as I told you, the auditors. Then you yourself might also refer to your detailed evaluation when you do the project monitoring on a regular basis. Fine. So let's get on to now the next. What do you cover or what do you provide in the credit application where board members or your senior credit committee members will look at? Essentially, you will have to cover some important information. Ownership structure. Now, as I told you before, there might be instances where we look at a project done by an individual company, or even a cluster of companies, a group of companies. It can be a large group like Haley's, or it can be even a Brandix cluster. So they are the big companies. But it also can be companies like Prime Group of companies, right? They also have their own group structure. It can be a company like Laughs here. So you need to give the ownership structure. Who finally owns? Now, I would like to just get on to the second point here. Let me hear from the class if someone can volunteer and tell me what exactly would you mean by ultimate beneficial owner? Someone can answer. Volunteer without me naming.
Shall I name someone? Oh, Priyanjana from Commercial Bank.
Yeah, Priyanjana.
Madam, actually, I don't know that.
Okay, right. So basically, ultimate beneficial owner is finally who controls the company. Either it could be through the ownership of the company or a key decision maker in the group. So generally nowadays in the banking, if you talk to your compliance department, they will want every client of yours to be mapped against their final ultimate beneficial owner. Basically, you need to know who is behind this company, because nowadays there can be so many anti-money laundering issues, probably certain political personnel may be behind the company. So basically, what is required here, what we actually expect from you when you prepare a project appraisal is that you need to know who controls the company. Now, in addition to that, your credit application should also carry who the board of directors and whether they are executives in the sense that they work in the company full time and manage the company. Now, there can be non-executive directors. There can be independent directors. So most of the companies today invite certain academics, certain industry personnel who are well known as independent directors to get value added to the company. There can be non-independent directors also. Then you've got to know who the key management is. So all this information in a very snapshot should go into your credit application where your board of directors will be looking at the appraisal. Little bit of incorporation details, when you have started the relationship with this particular company. So when you take a very difficult credit to the board might also look at how long we have been dealing with this customer. If your credit paper says we have been dealing with this customer for the past 20 years, then obviously your board is going to be comfortable because this customer has been dealing with us for so long and the next project of his also cannot be going bad. Then this is also extremely important. The CRIB references, you know about CRIB. I presume you all know what the CRIB is. And then what is PEP? I would like to hear from somebody what PEP is. Someone who knows?
Politically exposed person.
Excellent, excellent. Why do we have to be aware of that? Basically, certain projects, if it is promoted by a politically exposed party, you might look at it and say, this gentleman is from my favorite political party and I'm going to support. You go ahead, give the loan, 5 years down the line, the regime changes, the poor man is in trouble. Now your project gets into trouble. Okay, so that's why it's essential for you to know what his political background is and what influences him for the project and so on. Then the credit application continued. This is also like the same information that you will have to give. You will also have to give exactly the company exposure. How much are we exposed to this company already? If you're already exposed $1 billion, then probably your board may not be comfortable to extend further credit. And in addition to how much you are exposed, it's very important to know who are the other banks who are exposed to this company as well. Because you know why? When the company goes bad, sometimes it is essential for you to get together with all other banks who are funding that company to resurrect the position. Now, I'm sure you will also be knowing certain credits when they go bad. Each bank, rather than trying to take their share of pie, if you get together, the solution that you can offer to the customer can be to the betterment of the customer as well as to the banks. Then roughly very brief, key financial indicators like how they have performed over the last 3 years, just for your board to know what kind of financial performance this company has. And then the profitability to the bank. Obviously, you need to monitor how much my net interest income is, fee, target, whether I'm meeting my targeted income, and so on. And whether this company already has any NPL. And this terminology probably is slightly new to some of you, but some may be aware. This is what we call the return on risk adjusted capital. This is kind of a measurement you do to see for the money that I am lending or the capital that I am putting into this company as in the form of lending, what is my return? So this is little advanced in credit lending. Probably as you progress, you will be getting familiar with this. I don't want to burden you too much, but this is also fairly a good way of measuring how much return are you getting for the money you lend. Then a brief snapshot of the overall facility structure. Like the term loans, in a project there might be requirement for working capital, there might be LC requirements, and also the import loans and so on. So that entire structure you give a snapshot. Then roughly key terms and conditions. So this is basically your either 2-page or 3-page, the summary of the project appraisal. If someone reads these 2 pages or 3 pages, they should be able to get a fair idea of what you're going to go at length in your project appraisal. Okay, now we get into the most interesting part, which I think PR wanted me to start seriously on. A detailed project appraisal report. What do we cover here? And to what extent we go at appraising a project? Basically, the general saying is that the project appraisal should be what? It should be long enough to cover the subject, but it should be short enough to create interest. Like a what? I know all the guys know this. Like a girl's skirt. All right. So let's see now what exactly are we going to cover. Fine. Here we go into details, introduction, what your company is, what they have been doing in the past. I spoke of the ownership, who the promoters are. Then some companies may already have existing business verticals. For example, a coconut processing company will also sometimes maybe having coconut water business line, maybe a desiccated business line, and apart from all that, they may also sometimes maybe having a spice export business vertical as well. So you've got to know, and you also have to present to your approving authorities what other business verticals does this company has. Then market position that they are involved in, and then the relationship with the bank, which I spoke before. Then also you need to give in a brief snapshot what exactly the request is going to be. How much loan are you proposing? What is the tenure? What is the collateral? At what rate are you going to propose? Now, getting back to the company ownership, see, sometimes some of the companies you may have experienced, it's not only the Sri Lankans, but even the overseas companies also have a stake, or the foreigners also have a stake. Now, I can share one experience where we all worked, we were highly thrilled when we got a very large project to be funded in a particular industry. Actually, they were to be manufacturing using the steel coil or the steel wire, the nails for the USA market. So we were very thrilled. It's a very exciting thing, and it's going to be a large deal, and part of my annual budget is also going to be met. So we with a lot of effort put in, we started evaluating, and we went to the credit committee level. What did the credit committee told? But tell. They said, sorry, nothing doing. This is owned 100% by an Indian investor. We are not comfortable funding it. Please drop it. So that's why it's good to know who the ultimate owners are. Why was my credit committee not comfortable? Let's look at why. Because in that all enthusiasm, we did not realize why we were not comfortable. But to see the credit committee members said, look here, if the project is unsuccessful, you have lent about 70% of the project cost here. The promoters are not committing anything from themselves other than a 30% of the project. They can just dump it and go, you're saddled with the project. So therefore they said, unless the promoters are going to bring a significantly a sizable equity investment into the project, don't get it. So these are kind of things that your credit committee will also look at. Then I also have another experience where we also funded a trophy manufacturing company, and who the guy is from Nepal. Now, today I'm stuck with the project. He is also not very keen about the project. He is now back again in Nepal after COVID. I am scratching my head to see how I am now going to recover. So these are the things that you've got to be absolutely sure. How best can I get the commitment of the promoter? So background, ownership, where are they from, what business interest they have, all that will be important in that aspect. Guys, you've seen that we've gotten to the great green side, which means not too much for me to kind of go ahead, but there is quite a length to go. Right, then we get on to the project. I'm sure PL would have also covered already what exactly you should look at. You need to now look at the rationale of the project. What product or what technology they offer. Now, I'll share one of my experience. Basically, like how the nail project, we also got another very interesting project. You know what it is? One day, a gentleman who is looking very academic and very professory came and sat with us to present a project proposal, and he was going on talking about getting the land and now getting the snakes reared. We were wondering what this whole thing about. To see, actually, he was going to manufacture or produce snake venom specific for snakes. Now, this project is going to be in Damodaran. He spoke of the pythons, he spoke of cobra and how he is going to cage them and get the venom from their teeth and the venom fang and manufacture, bottle it. And he also then said how he is going to have a back-to-back arrangement with the Sri Lankan government, because he said majority of the Sri Lankans who are dying out of snake bites are mainly because there is no specific snake venom available for that specific snake type. We apparently have only a very general one, which is not the best. But see, now that requires very highly skilled technical knowledge. Ultimately, we of course didn't fund the project because we also thought we did not have adequate technical knowledge internally to evaluate that project. So that's what I said, the product, then the market, as I told you, then the market and the market potential. Is there a buyer concentration? If there is only one buyer, what is the risk? If that buyer goes bust, then even your project is going to be in trouble. And also the justification for this investment. You do a big investment, but if that does not give adequate return to the promoter, both the promoter and the funding bank is going to be in trouble. Now, I'm sure Pierre covered about NPV, IRR. So these are the measures that you need to talk about in your project appraisal to justify it with good equity returns and project IRRs. Project costs, I think I need not dwell too much on. You are all familiar with. But all what I would suggest you to look at is, please look at very carefully whether you have taken all the cost items into account. It can be pre-operational. What do you mean by pre-operational? Can someone tell me? I'm sure someone knows what pre-operational is. When you do a project, what could the pre-operational be? Let me hear a guy speaking now. I heard too many lady voices now.
I think someone speak. Gamini, are you there? Gamini?
All right. Pre-operational.
We have a lot of ladies, I think. We can ask the lady too.
All right. At least one lady voice then.
Expenses before starting the operations?
Exactly. What you have to spend for applying for licenses and maybe looking at the initial lands and certain expenses that you have to. So then you look at the land, building, machinery, working capital requirement, all that you need to take into account.
Ishani,
But
can I come in?
sorry,
Interest during construction also pre-operation.
exactly, yes. IDC we call interest during construction. That also has to be part of your project cost. Now, as PL says that because while you grant the loan, although you give a capital grace, the customer has to keep servicing the interest. So you work out the interest during the construction period and you take it as part of the project cost. In addition to that, what we do generally is that once you estimate the project cost as per the customer, we also look at whether he has provided adequate buffer as a contingency. Any project can have a little bit of cost overruns, unexpected, unaccounted, unanticipated costs coming in. So therefore, you need to have a decent percentage of the project cost, maybe 5% or 8% as a buffer, which means you call it as a contingency. Right. Then we get on to the means of finance. Now, means of finance, as PR would have already spoken to you, it can be equity, debt, and some companies, some of you would have heard about quasi-equity, preference shares. Those are various means that you can fund a project. Then what you need to look at is whether the gearing ratio is acceptable. Certain industries have their own strengths and weaknesses. Based on the industry, probably you can vary your gearing. If the risks are very high, you have to have a lower gearing because then you're buffering for a equity contribution. In case the project goes bad, a significant heat is felt by the promoter as well. There are certain industries where fairly comfortable. Probably, you can also add things like sometimes the renewable energy where the payment risk is fairly mitigated. You can go up to even maybe 70% of the project cost. There are instances where we have even gone up to 85%. Yes. So that is that. And then who the other lenders are. This is key because you need to also be a little watchful when you are funding a project and what the other lenders' terms and conditions are. You need to keep an eye. Now, frankly, when PL and I were funding the same project, I used to just peep in and check and see what PL is putting as conditions to make sure, mainly to ensure that his conditions do not deprive one thing, my term loans, and vice versa. I'm sure PL also would have done the same thing. That is one way that you ensure that the projects help. Now, this can be done in two ways. One is that you do discreetly, or even you can talk to each other, the banks, and banks come collectively to some understanding. This would be the best way for both banks to finance, which we call sometimes co-financing or syndications. Has anyone participated in the class? Whoever has anyone participated in any syndications? Just would like to know.
I think there is someone from Bank of Ceylon. She has done mold use project as well.
Ah, lovely. So that's much more interesting because you are managing two different geographies, localities, jurisdictions, two different sets of legal systems and so on. Lovely. Okay, so let's quickly get on to the other in the interest of time. The land, location, extent, ownership, whether the ownership is with the project company, if the land is owned by a third party, I'm sure you have experience of third party funding, what the legal implications there are, right? Because if the third party is owned, the land is owned by a third party and we get a mortgage, and what would the problem be? Someone who knows, let me tell me.
We cannot parade the property.
We can't go on the
Parate.
exactly. Which means our recovery process is going to be much longer, and by that time probably the recovery may not even be practical. Then you look at the valuation. Be careful in valuation. Your valuation has to be absolutely correct because you will decide your loan quantum also looking at the valuation and your asset cover. So it's always good to get a formal valuation. I'm sure Bank of Ceylon has an internal panel of valuers too, so that you make sure that your land is not overvalued, because finally if the project goes bad and we go on a legal recovery, this is what we are finally left with. So other than that, maybe you also need to make a visit, observe the surrounding, look at whether there are issues, whether there are unwanted settlements in the project, or whether there are any geological aspects. For example, PI will know the best when we go for funding of hydro projects, this geological aspect, whether there can be landslides, whether there can be floods, all those you need to check. Now, how do you do that? Ideal way is that you do a visit to your site, and you also attach your visit report to the project appraisal so that it's a proof that you have gone, seen, evaluated with your own eyes. Coming on to the machinery side, need not go into very much detail, but what is the make? Whether it's a used machinery that you are buying or a brand new machinery, and who the suppliers are, what is the valuation, or what's the purchase price? Is the purchase price a reasonable price this customer is paying? What are the warranties? Then the machine that he is buying, whether it's suitable for the purpose. All that you need to evaluate. I can give you one example where we went bad and we had a bad experience. We found a particular project in the packaging of food. This particular company was manufacturing packaging material for food industry, and it was to be exported to UK. Very high quality. So it contained certain packaging machines, printing machines, laminating machines, and so on. And this company went bad. Certain mismanagement of funding, and then also didn't have enough market. So these are the weaknesses of our evaluation we have now learned. Now, once this company went bad, we had the machinery which were to be finally taken over as a Parate and then sold. Came to the selling point, we just realized the price that he has initially quoted and showed us is far higher than the actual machine that we could have bought from the market. So which means the promoter has done some jugglery. We also did not have enough technical knowledge to evaluate whether the price is reasonable. We fell into his trap. So that is why it is very important that we always check whether the price is very reasonable. Probably you can get competitive quotations, or you nowadays there is internet available, web is available, anything is available in the web. You can just Google and check whether these are reasonable prices. Similarly, need not go into at much length, they basically building. The cost, the structure, if you have an internal in-house engineer, get that engineer's help to evaluate the structure, whether it's a reasonable cost per square foot, and then who the contractors are, known contractors or whether totally unknown, and what designs, all that you can go into detail. So I don't want to bore you too much on this. Then comes a very important thing which sometimes we generally ignore. There is no point putting up a plant, putting up a lovely building, beautiful building, but if you don't have your utility arranged, electricity, water, if it's probably a apartment project, how is the garbage collection, sewage disposal, all that is required to be looked into. We are not over yet. Then some more aspects to look at. You need to look at all the approvals. Regulatory, if you look at BOIs, then if it's a power project, CB, then if it's a tourism project, you will have Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority approvals. You need to ensure that all required approvals are obtained. Now, I want to put a question to the class. How would you know what are the approvals required for a project? We are not the genius to know everything, no? So let me hear from you. How would you know what are the approvals required?
Try to answer. You can make a mistake, but it's okay.
Of course, yes. You are in a class because you are yet to learn.
Well, maybe to check with the relevant government authority who approves the project.
Spot on. Spot on. Actually, yes. If you look at a hydro project, the authorities who approve will clearly stipulate what are the authorities that need to grant approval for this project. There may be forestry coming in, there may be local authority approvals, there might be CEA, Central Environmental Approving Authorities. So all that will get specified. So that's one way. And the other is that you always can refer back and see whether your own bank or even with among your colleagues who are in other banks who have funded similar projects, whether there are any additional approvals required. So it's a knowledge sharing. So you can talk to the colleagues and also look at a previous appraisal, somebody who is senior enough done. So these are kind of very informal sources that you can gather information. Then coming to the stakeholders. Let's look at a large condominium project. So you will have its contractors, you will have its architects, consultants, suppliers of material, equipment suppliers. So all these you need to evaluate and see whether they are acceptable contractors. Now for a large condominium, you may have to go for a grade 1 contractor. Maybe for a small housing project or whatever, you need not. So that is where, with the experience of over a period evaluating projects, you will be able to make your own judgment whether this kind of a project requires an A-grade contractor or maybe a second tier or a third tier contractor would suffice for this kind of project. And architects, whether architects are known, so on. So basically, then here comes to my favorite area, environmental aspects. I think increasingly now the banks also are kind of focusing on these kind of areas, like certain multilateral agencies exclude certain activities being funded, like large scale logging. Some multilaterals do prohibit you to lend to alcohol, tobacco industries. So do you have any experience of anyone of any banks where their multilateral lenders have excluded certain activities?
Maybe not right.
Particularly the entities like IFC, then FMO from Netherlands, Probaco from France, all of them have very stringent excluded activities. Then you also look at social aspects. What the worker safety, labor conditions, whether they are into any prohibited activities. Certain activities are prohibited illegally, when could be like certain things, and whether the project is on a heritage site. So these are basically what you would look at under the environmental aspects. Social and environment. Then comes to a very important aspect, which is the market. Now, the market, you need to be very sure the project that you're funding or what the company is producing has a market. That is where you require to do a very in-depth industry analysis to see what is the competition, existing market, whether the market is already saturated with the players. For example, now let's look at a cement industry. Now, before a customer, basically before you evaluate a customer who has come for cement manufacturing, you will have to look at who are already there in the market. Is the market concentrated? Is there supply more than demand? In which case, what will happen to my customer's product? That is that. And if there is competition, a heavy competition, what competitive advantage is this particular customer's product offering the market? Then the distribution channels, target market share. All this you need to look at and also write in your appraisal. Then look at key suppliers and key customers. I'll take both these two things together. Look at whether there is over concentration. If a customer has only one supplier, that's extremely risky. I know a customer, a spice export customer, who had 80% of his sales being contributed by one customer overseas. And the moment this customer stops paying, or if his customer goes bust, the business here goes bad. So these are the things that you will have to look at. And particularly if it's an export customer, you need to do thorough due diligence as to who the end customer is. Working capital requirement. I'm sure once you do the project, like once you do the project financing, then comes the regular manufacturing, if it's a manufacturing plant. Then you will have to work out what exactly is their working capital requirement, because not only funding the main project, you will also have to look at financing his working capital requirement also. So your project proposal should carry not only the long-term lending side, but also what his working capital requirement going to be. So a debtor analysis, a creditor analysis, stock holding period, you take all that into account and then basically do a working capital requirement. I just said that I will primarily focus on local projects, but if you happen to be evaluating an offshore project, I'm sure Bank of Ceylon will know. You will have to look at the country, that country's economy, growth industries, what interest rates prevail there, what's their inflation. Then the political stability is very important. I can give you an example. I'm just running over time, but I'll try to quickly cover it because we were very aggressively looking at financing a project in Myanmar up just about 4 months ago. For some reason, my board didn't approve it. They said, this is a too risky a project. We wouldn't want to go there. You take a mortgage over the project. How are you going to enforce? Myanmar is still not very clear in terms of their legal systems. They are still kind of not very clear as to what their political stability is. 2 months down the line, today we are experiencing what we are seeing in Myanmar. So I said, thank God I was saved. Thanks to my board, we were saved. See, so that's why it's very important that you look at the political stability, then the legal system, because you're going to take a mortgage over the property in that land.
Take your time, Ishani. It's okay.
Then also the currency. Currency is also very important because you need to see you're lending in dollars, whether that country has adequate dollars to repay your loan back. I'm sure Bank of Ceylon, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. When you funded a project in Maldives, isn't this area that you looked at?
Yeah, what's her name? It's Dhammika.
Damika, I'm sure you would have looked at the currency because Maldives is very famous for their scarcity of dollars. Right? Right, fine. I'm quickly getting on to the next slide. The management. Hi, yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear you clearly.
No, I think someone.
All right, okay, fine. That's
Right.
domestic disturbance. Right, then the management. I touched on this before, and I basically emphasized in a project for me, I would first look at who the promoter is. If I'm to look at the project, my first criteria is I need to know who the promoter is. I need to know who he is. I need to know who the promoter is. Because the technology, the project can go bad, but if the promoter has the capacity and the will, the project can be turned around. But for some reason, if the promoter is a willful defaulter, despite your project being a very good project, very high technology, the repayment of your loan is going to be in the hands of the God. As I mentioned before, board of directors, their experience, the management, all that will matter when it comes to the management side. Right, finally. Coming on to the most important thing of the project, which PL I think is partly has covered and will also be covering, your financial analysis. I would like to segregate the financial analysis into 2 segments. One is if it's a company completely new, of course you will not have this segment. But if it's a company who is already in existence or a promoter who already has a business who is doing a new project, you will have the past analysis coming into the picture. And then of course your projections and the forecast. Financial analysis in the past financial analysis, I would call your P&L, your balance sheet and your cash flows that the customer shows you as yet his past track record. There is a story behind those numbers. So try to understand what that story is. And when in your report, you need not kind of report everything. Focus on the exceptions. Try to highlight either the what exceptionally has gone good or what exceptionally has gone bad. So you can use the trend analysis, various ratios, you know what the profitability ratios are, and I'm sure PR will touch again, the gross profitability, EBITDA ratios, and then probably even the net profit to turnover ratios, all that can be kind of analyzed. What I suggest is look at your P&L balance sheet for good 10 minutes and try to understand what is the story this statement is going to tell me. What is the story or the history behind these numbers? Never accept anything that on the face of it. Dig deep, try to understand and question the customer, because any audited statement will give you certain inside information which you need to really dig into. And try to relate your customers' numbers with the performance of the market or competition if you have access to. Then the balance sheet, like you look at whether he's already highly geared, right? And this is irrelevant here. And these two, just forget that basically it's not irrelevant here. And then get on to the cash flows, like cash flow, how efficiently they have managed and whether the company has a net positive cash flow. Then we get on to the forecast. Forecast, I'm sure PR will cover in detail. When you do your forecast, it's like you do your own financial model. You look at the production numbers, capacity utilization, selling price. You do a very detailed analysis as to try to do your own model. Just don't try to depend on what the customer gives. When you do your own model, you will dig deep into pricing, whether this price is sellable, is this capacity utilization practical, product costs like the raw materials, selling and distribution, are these practical, what are his overheads, and at these borrowing levels, how much is going to be the finance cost. And also if it's a tax exempted company, then for maybe for 7 years they are tax exempted, but after 7 years the tax liability is going to kick in. What will happen to the company then? All that you will be able to do. And when you do detailed financial modeling, I'm sure PR will also guide you as to how you need to toy around with the numbers. So basically then once you do your P&L, with that, you will be thereafter getting on to your forecast pro forma balance sheet. Gearing levels, working capital cycle, debtors days, creditors days, all that you can evaluate. Look at a cash flow, you look at a debt servicing capacity and see. Coming on to the focused financial ratios. You know what your usual ratios like the gross profitability, EBITDA ratios, and so on. Tell me, what do you think about what this phrase is? DSCR. Anyone who knows?
Debt service cover ratio.
All right. May I know who is this?
This is Priyanjala
Priyanjala. Which bank are you from, Priyanjala?
from Commercial Bank, ma'am.
Lovely. Tell me, in Commercial Bank, what formula do you use to work out a debt service cover ratio?
From this debt service cover ratio, we are seeking whether the customer could service the facilities with the income generated.
Right. So basically you take,
Yeah.
what
Above
parameters do you take?
Formula,
yeah,
equation.
it is before above 2, it's good.
When you use when you work out a debt service cover ratio, Priyanjala,
Yes.
what are the parameters you take into account? You take basically
Total debt.
Basically, you first look at what is the free cash flow available for servicing the debt, right?
Yes.
So you take out the depreciation, non-cash items, and then you take the cash flow available,
Yes.
and then you see what are the debt liabilities, like the capital repayments, interest payment on the long-term debt, and the interest payment on the short-term debt.
Yes.
Why are you not taking the capital repayments on the short term? You exclude capital repayment on the short term. Any idea why? That is because your short term cash flow is getting revolved and recycled, right?
Right.
So therefore, it's getting revolved. So therefore, although you repay, it's again getting replenished. Therefore, you don't take the short-term capital repayments. You take only the long-term capital repayments, interest on both long-term and short-term. Right. Now we will get into the sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity analysis is where you evaluate and see few key important parameters of the project. It can be the selling price, it can be the capacity utilization, or it can be even the production cost. If those move negatively, what impact are you going to have onto your debt servicing? So you look at if the debt servicing to be at least 1 times, to what extent can these parameters be moved negatively? And then you look at what is the probability of those events happening. So this is a very key and very important aspect of your project appraisal. Then coming to the basically last lap of the last 2 slides, nothing much. The security, as I mentioned before, you need to look at and understand exactly what your security is. And each bank will have your own norms for asset cover. And you will also have your own norms and central bank guided percentages that you use to discount your certain asset classes. For example, we do use 80% of the land and the building for our asset cover computation. Why do we do that? Because we are leaving the 20% for any depreciation of value eventually if we are to recover by selling. Now, for example, machinery, you might use a 70% or a 60% depending on the category type, if it's a frequently used, a common machine and so on. So that's where you will look at, in an eventuality of that you are compelled to recover your loan from the selling of assets, how much do you think is reasonably recoverable? So the discounting factors, then comparison against the bank norms, all that you will have to present in your project appraisal. Finally, coming on to the terms and conditions. So basically, we have 3 or 4 broad categories of terms and conditions in your terms sheet. First category is all facility related. You need to tell who the borrowers are. There can be joint borrowers. So you need to clearly name them. And what is the amount? What's the tenure? Repayment structure, interest rate, how much is your internal transfer price? Therefore, what is your business line margin? All that you will be kind of indicating in this segment. Then comes the pre-disbursement conditions that we call. Basically, there can be, now to safeguard your project, you might be taking certain undertakings either from shareholders. What kind of undertakings have you experienced in taking, in terms of undertaking? Someone can come out. Sometimes, if we are not very comfortable, we will tell the promoters, look here, up until the project is sound, running properly, we don't want you to take dividends. Now, we put a condition on the company offer letter saying you can't pay dividends. But just as much as we bind the company, we will also have to bind the shareholders that they agree to this company and not for them to not to receive dividends for first few years. So these are the undertakings that you would be incorporating in your disbursement conditions, that the shareholders have to agree they are not going to receive dividends for first few years. Then sometimes you might make pre-disbursement conditions to have all the approvals, licenses in place before I do my disbursement. Your execution of security. Now, in addition to these two primary criteria, you may also have certain special conditions. You may ask the company, you can't route your cash flows anywhere. I have funded the project. So you need to send the cash flows all to the bank account you maintain with me. Then as part of special conditions, you may have restrictions to dividend payouts. Then you might also restrict, look here, I evaluated the project looking at Mr. So-and-so as the promoter. I was comfortable only if he was holding the ownership. Now you can't go and transfer the project to somebody else. So what do? You would limit the ownership changes. You will say, look here, Mr. So-and-so, you showed your face to borrow the money. Looking at your face, your credibility, I lent to the project. Therefore, until the project loan is over and until my debt is settled in full, you cannot let loose the control of the company. Similarly, you will also say, look here, I have given the maximum possible debt that the project can absorb. You can't go elsewhere and borrow without telling me. So further borrowing, sometimes you restrict. This get connected to your debt service ratio, DSCR, which I mentioned. If your DSCR is very tight, probably there are instances where you control your further borrowings. And then, of course, comes to the bank's general conditions, which generally comes as a separate set of terms or a booklet or whatever. So this brings us to the kind of my part of discussion with you today into what I would expect in a detailed project evaluation. And so basically we come to a conclusion, and thank you for listening. Now I would like to take 5 minutes, Pial, if you don't mind, just to the class. Yes, and see what questions they have.
Thank you, Ishani. So please.
I'm sorry, I went over the time allocated to me. Just tried quickly covering.
Well, that's all right, I think you.
Any questions coming? Class seem to be.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
you have financed waste to energy, Ishani, waste to energy projects?
We actually evaluated it, got the facility all approved, but this particular company that we approved the facility got into a little bit of financial struggle. So at this point in time, we are very carefully watching without committing to it, because we don't think the promoter has capacity now to do the project.
Yeah. At the same project, we also approved excellent.
Exactly. Both of us were the same.
We missed the other successful project completed by HNB-led syndication.
Now, Pial, why we couldn't get there was also because the pricing was so fine. It didn't make sense for us to lend to that project.
That's the reason we also didn't agree.
Finally, you do a lot of work with an intention to earn a reasonable return to the bank. If you don't earn that return, then there is no point.
Okay, students, please ask any one question at least, because if not...
I'll tell you, Pial, maybe you have my number with you. So maybe if the class wants to ask, probably they can call me or text me. I'm free to answer anything if they want.
I do have a question. This might sound a little bit stupid, but just to know, because most of the project promoters, they make use of special purpose organizations. And so then they don't have any financials or anything of that sort when they are bidding for these projects. And the promoter is also not someone who is actively in business or doing, maybe there are like certain parties who get together and form this SPE. In such a situation, like how do you evaluate in terms of how the promoter is, or when you don't have anything to check on?
Actually, Hasanji, it's a good question. It's basically your question is when the promoter does not have satisfactory track record or the background and bidding with a newly created entity for a project. So,
Yes, correct.
in which case you need to be very careful, because once he gets the project, number one, in some form or other, you need to establish the financial strength and the stability of this person behind the project, either by assessing his existing business or some other comfort that he brings. If not, my advice to you is that it may not be safe for you to put your hands in, and you might get your hands burned, because halfway through the project, if the company does not have enough money or the promoter doesn't have enough money to bring in as equity, then it's a problem, because in your evaluation, you agree with a debt to equity ratio, assuming the equity entirety will be brought in as the project progresses. So whether he has the capacity to bring that equity need to be assessed upfront, and you need to also have certain proof that he has that money to put in. So special purpose vehicles need to be very carefully funded. I'm not saying you shouldn't do, particularly in the energy industry, it's a very common thing. But all what you need to be ensuring is that the promoter behind the person, we said promoter, he has adequate the funds to bring to the project. So you need to analyze his financial background thoroughly. So don't feel shy when you have your interview with him. Be straightforward and ask. Sometimes mostly what happens to the bankers is they think that it's bad for us to ask this customer this question, and they refrain asking, but you shouldn't do that. You can very subtly, very politely put the question, these are things that we want to know with your background. Can you take us through your background? Tell us what you did before, all that, so that from those interviews you can gather information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as Ishani said, the promoter is very important. The project can be very good. If the promoter is not very good, the project can fail. You said
exactly.
Otherwise, other way project may not be so good. But if the promoter is very good, you said in your presentation. Thank you, Ishani. I think you did a great presentation, and I learned a lot. I think our students also would have learned. And I learned this color scheme thing. I should use color scheme in my presentation.
I used it so that I gave them a guideline not to get bored. They know when they say green, I'm getting into the end of it.
This technical knowledge thing we have discussed in the class, for small banks, when they do project financing, they say they don't have technical knowledge. Right? They can't get a consultant even to give that is costly for them to arrange a consultant. Then the customer might go to a bigger bank for the financing. So this technical knowledge, I explained to them also that you develop along the way. You have sector specialists in the bank. When you are a big bank, you can have different sector specialists, and they will know in and out of the industry. So small banks have so I told him, then you have to join with the big bank, experienced bank as a syndicator. Then the big bank will look after the technical side.
Very true. So when once you do one or two with the big banks, then you get the hang of it, and then thereafter you learn. So and we are also more than happy to share whatever the way that if you all approach us, we are very happy to share any experience or little knowledge we have gathered.
Yeah. Then thank you, Ishani. Then
It's pleasure for me to be delivering this lecture, and thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor. So please do keep in touch, and if you have any questions, feel free to pass it on to Pial, or Pial will pass my number. You all can pass the question to me on text or something.
Yeah. I cannot offer any token of appreciation. Maybe
This invitation itself is an honor for me.
Thank you very much, Ishani. All the best in your future endeavors. And on the next assignment you are having on the panel discussion on 28th of March. And thank you and all the best.
Thanks a lot, Pial. Thank you very much. All the very best to the team. I'm sure your course is going to be very interesting.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
It kept me going for 22 years, so it can keep you going for so many years. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, madam.
Bye.
Okay.
Sure.
Right. Thank you. You're still there?
Yeah, I'm just trying to leave.
Right, right. I'm not chasing out.
All right. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay. Now we have come to 8:33, so we are not taking a break. So any questions? I think I'm happy that few of you asked questions, but you should have asked more. And, what do you think of the session?
Very clear and interesting, sir.
Yeah,
So good.
yes, because it's
Excellent one.
different from my presentation. She's very lively and she had a lot of material. That's why I'm bringing in different presenters so that you will get their experience. Now, I have spoken to Head National Bank, AGM Corporate Banking. He is very busy, but there's another person whom I have trained. She was earlier head of project finance, now chief manager risk. So I have told her to be ready. She has promised to come back tomorrow with what area she will be covering. Okay. So shall we get into our presentation now? Any questions? I will start the presentation. We'll continue. Today is 23rd, 30th, because Thursday we are having a break because of the APB AGM. Some of the things Ishani discussed is in this presentation: net present value and other investment criteria. So how do you? I will finish at 8:45 since we didn't have a break. I will take only 10 minutes and then we'll go to the. We'll continue on the 30th, right? So how to create value for the investor? Now, she also mentioned the project should be viable. First, we have to look at the project viability, right? After that, only we have to look at whether the project has enough cash flows to pay the loan, right? If the project is not viable, then we can straight away say we are not going to give a loan, or we are not. If we are going to invest in the project, we are not going to invest, right? So value is created for an investor if the investor earns more than the investment cost. So you invest in a project and you have to earn more than what you invest, right? So that is how value is created. Then another way is the investor has different options to invest. Right? There is not only one project, he has two other options to invest. And if he finds the investment which is giving more return than the next investment. So that's the investor, if the investor earns more than he should earn, put on the other investments that he should make. So we have to look at from the investor's value. We are not looking at from the bank value. We are looking from the investor's side, how they look at the investment. So any investment, when we make, there is an opportunity cost, right? Now, if you say you have 1 million of rupees, right? Where can you invest that 1 million? You can invest in an FD, right? Okay. So if you invest in FD, you get maybe 7% or 8% interest. What is the bank 1 year FD rate now? Maybe 6%.
Yes, less. Yes.
Less than that also, right? Okay. Right. So that is why I think these days the interest should be in real estate or projects, because if you can get a better return than the bank interest rate, then you go for that investment. Right? So the opportunity cost is you take a lower risk and invest in a bank, or you take a higher risk and invest in some other, like in the stock market. Maybe we can get a return. These days it's really down. So that's the call of the investor. The opportunity cost is the cost that is incurred if the investor places cash into a project, so that the cash is not available for investment in other lucrative investment. Right? So after we invest in a project, we can't take it back and invest in a better project. So before investing, we have to look at whether that is a better investment. So in determining this criteria, the evaluation of investment, the analytical techniques chosen must select for investments that not only create value, but also create it at a greater rate than other investments. Right? So when we do evaluation, we have to see whether our investment we are going to make is creating value and it is more than the other investment with similar risk. Right? We cannot compare different risk level. We have to compare with similar risk level. And with, I think I showed you a graph that day where same risk, but some company is having a higher return. Okay. So there are a large number of criteria to determine and quantify if value is created for the investor. Right? Of these, payback period, I think we discussed last time as well. Return on investment, discounted payback period, NPV, internal rate of return, profitability index, and the benefit cost ratio, both are like same. And we will learn in this session today and on 30th. Now we look at a normal case where we can, whether there's value creation, right? So how value is created? We take an example. We buy a rundown house for 10 million. That is old dilapidated house for 10 million rupees, right? Then we spend another 10 million for renovation. Some people are doing that for business. To spend another 10 million for renovation and put back the house in the market, and we find it can be sold for 25 million, right? So what is the value addition by the management? 5 million. So you buy for 10 million, spend another 10 million, so you spend 20 million, and you sell it for 25 million. But the challenge is, before buying that house, how do we know we can make 5 million? Right? After we invest 20 million, whether we can get a return, that is, we don't know, right? So that is the techniques we have to learn to find out whether we can make money out of that house. So that investment is desirable because it creates value for its owner. Right? So the above example is it creates value for the owner. But the main problem is those type of opportunities are rare, and most of the time we can't actually observe the relevant market value. We don't know the market value. Instead, we estimate it. Having done so, it is only natural to wonder whether or not our estimates are at least closer to 2 years. So all our project financing is we estimate for the future. Now, Ishani was telling how to analyze the estimate, right? So we have to know the industry to analyze. We should look at the industry statistics. We should look at the competition and see whether they are doing it. If there's a lot of competition, then how are we going to add value and make money in a lot of competitive markets? She was telling about the cement industry. So it's always, project finance is very difficult thing because we are analyzing something in the future. We look at, predict for the future and do the loan now. Not like corporate banking. I think we had a comparison where you have the financials, past financials. I think there was a question also. Most of the time, project financing is like special vehicle loan, right? Because most of the energy projects, you have to have a special new company, right? SPVs. So because of that, we don't have much background information. As Ishani mentioned, we have to look at the promoter, how he has done projects in the past, right? And look at the his track record and analyze the project. Now, she took some examples like the Myanmar. Now, they have analyzed and they have recommended to the board, but the board said with their board experience that they should not finance. Now, it has happened to me also. Like we analyzed a condominium project, and myself and the CEO both recommended to the board subcommittee, but the board subcommittee chairman was not in favor. And actually that was his decision was correct, that condominium, that real estate development company is in trouble, and they went into this garbage to energy project. I discussed with Ishani, both Ceylon, NDB approved facility, but we haven't dispersed because they had these financial problems with the project. So these techniques we will learn next time. You need to have a calculator with you when you come next time, because answers for the problems I have not given, right? Yeah, problem 1, determine the payback period. So you have to work it out with me. First you have to work it out, and then I will explain how it is done. If you have so you will learn by doing. If not, everything I do, you may not learn, right? So next time when you come up with your calculators and be ready. Maybe you can do the calculations. Now you have 1 more week. You have the material. Do the calculations and tell me how to do it. Okay. Any questions? Since we didn't take a break, I will give you the break at the end. Any questions? I think our NDB students didn't ask any questions from Ishani. Sarendri, did you?
No, sir. No.
Yeah, because you must be answering her questions most of the time at the office, so no need to do it here. Is it?
Yes, well, if we had asked, I guess there would have been more questions connected to that question tomorrow. So therefore, we didn't want to ask anything.
Right. Okay. I think I want to thank NDB for having four participants and their project finance head making a presentation.
Mhm.
And I will I will get hold of other banks also to get the knowledge shared. I wanted actually, I would have not conveyed it to Ishani correctly. I wanted her to do the other side, like the when someone comes with a project proposal, what you look, but she has done for your next assignment, what you have to do, she presented today. That is how to evaluate a project. Right? So that you will be having enough knowledge to evaluate the project, and we will be doing some more in my class as well. Anyone else wants to speak? Tulanga, you have two names, no? You have in the registration, your name is Charunaka. What's your correct name, Tulanga?
Hello. Actually, my name is Charunaka, but here it's registered as Chulang. But anyway,
right.
that name also I use. It doesn't matter.
Your name is Charunaka, no? Right? That's what the last time also. Menaka brought me a list of 3 new names. That's why I asked whether you have introduced, and the name was different from what I have in the schedule.
Email was created as Chulang, but therefore it continued.
Okay. Then we'll close for the. We will meet again on 30th. So you go through the notes and prepare with your answers for the 30th class. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good night.